released SAT practice test number 2. Today I will walk you through section 3, the no calculator section. So starting off with question number 1, if 5x plus 6 equals 10, what is the value of 10x plus 3? So let's solve for x. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides, get 5x equals 4. Divide by 5 on both sides, get x equals 4/5. And then we need to find the value of 10x plus 3. So we're going to plug in our 4/5, so 10 times 4/5 plus 3. So 10 times 4 is 40, divided by 5 is 8, plus 3 equals 11. So number 1 is C. Number 2, which of the following ordered pairs x, y satisfies the system of equations above? So we can see that of the two methods that we can solve system of equations using either substitution or elimination, I see that if I multiply my first equation by 2, then I can, to get 2x plus 2y equals 0, then my y terms will cancel out. So I'll add my two equations together. 5x equals 10, and so x equals 2. And so, which right away lets me know that the answer is B. Now, something to keep in mind is that we didn't have to do any math to deduce which answers could possibly be it, because the first equation says x plus y equals 0, which means that the two solutions, x and y, have to be the same number but different signs. And so right away, A can't be it and D can't be it. So it's either B or C, and then from there you solve using standard algebra, and then you get to your answer. Number 3 says, a landscaping company estimates the price of a job in dollars using the expression 60 plus 12n(h), where n is the number of landscapers who will be working and h is the total number of hours the job will take using n landscapers. Which of the following is the best interpretation of the number 12 in the expression? So because 12 is attached to our two variables, we need a statement that will include both n and h, so both the number of workers and the hours that they work. And so we can see that, for example, B does not make sense because it says a minimum of 12 landscapers will work on each job. Well, that's not true, because A, it doesn't have both hours and landscapers in the answer, but also nothing in this paragraph says that that's a limitation. And so then we see also the answer choice C doesn't work because it doesn't include both landscapers and hours, leaving us with A and D. And so D cannot make sense because each landscaper working 12 hours a day, hours is not a constant, hours is a variable, so the hours changes. It's not always going to be 12 hours, and so it's not D, leaving us with A, the best option. On to number 4, which of the following is equivalent to the expression shown above? And so we look at our expression 9a to the 4th plus 12a squared b squared plus 4b to the 4th. This looks confusing at first, but when looking at our answers, we see that this question is trying to test our knowledge of what happens when you raise a binomial, or two terms added or subtracted together, raised to a certain power. And so we can see that in choice D, for example, 9a plus 4b, if all that is to the 4th power, then we can check just with the first term if that will work with our given expression. And so if we have 9a to the 4th power, that's not just a to the 4th power, but also 9 to the 4th power, which is much bigger than 9, so it cannot be D. Same thing with 9a squared to the 2nd power. A squared is going to be squared, but so is 9. And 9 squared is 81. 81 does not equal 9 as in our expression, so it cannot be C either. With B, 3 is being raised to the 4th power, and 3 to the 4th equals 81, which again is not equal to our 9 a to the 4th. We get 81 a to the 4th for B, and so that leaves us with A. And if you did the whole expression, if you FOILed out 3a squared plus 2b squared multiplied by itself, then you would get A. Question number 5, if k is greater than 0 and x equals 7 in the equation above, what is the value of k? So they give us the value of x, so let's just plug in what we know. We know that 2k squared plus 17 minus 7, because x is 7, equals 0. We can add 7 to both sides, leaving us with the square root of 2k squared plus 17 equals 7. In order to get rid of the square root on the left side, we can square everything, leaving us with 2k squared plus 17 equals 49. Subtract our 17. 2k squared equals 32. Divide everything by 2. We get k squared equals 16. And then finally, square root k equals plus or minus 4. In this case, it's positive 4, giving us 5 as C. Number 6. In the xy plane above, line L is parallel to line K. What is the value of P? So we know that because they're parallel, they have the same slope. And so, for example, the slope of line L, we can figure out by just writing out both points, assigning them x1, y1, x2, y2, and then we can use our slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that gives us 0 minus 2 over negative 5 minus 0, negative 2 over negative 5, or a slope of 2 over 5. And so what that means is that for every 2 units you go up, you go 5 units to the right. And so that holds true for line K over here, for this line, the second line. So line K will also have the same slope. So if I go up 2 units over 5 units, up 2 over 5, and then up 2 over 5, that gets us to P. So we traveled in total 10 units, because we went 5 units over and then 5 units over again. We went up a total of 4, so we went from negative 4 to 0. So we know that that makes sense. And so we went a total of 5 plus 5 distance, or 10 distance. So P is equal to 10, because our starting point was at the x value, x coordinate of 0. Number 7, if x to the a squared power divided by x to the b squared power equals x to the 16, x is greater than 1 and a plus b equals 2, what is the value of a minus b? So we have, for example, a very simple demonstration, a to the 5th divided by a squared. We're going to subtract the 2 powers to get a cubed. And so with that in mind, we can now apply that to our question at hand. So we're going to simply write out what we have. We have x to the a squared divided by x to the b squared, which is equal to x to the a squared minus b squared equals x to the 16. We can now write out the powers, so a squared minus b squared equals 16. And then what we can see here is that this question is testing our knowledge of the difference of squares, or the fact that a squared minus b squared. A squared is a square and b squared is a square. And so we can factor that out by simply putting a plus b times a minus b. We have the square roots of a squared and b squared, and then we just add them and subtract them. So a plus b times a minus b equals 16. And so let's make a bit of room for ourselves up here. And so what do we know? We know that a plus b is 2. So let's substitute in 2 for this. So 2 times a minus b equals 16. Well, what times 2 equals 16? That's 8. 7 is A. And now for question number 8. The measure A in degrees of an exterior angle of a regular polygon, is related to the number of sides n of the polygon by the formula above. If the measure of an exterior angle of a regular polygon is greater than 50 degrees, what is the greatest number of sides it can have? So because it's telling us that the measure of an exterior angle of a regular polygon is greater than 50 degrees, I want to include an inequality sign, but because there's two variables on the same side, I can't quite do that. So I'm going to rewrite this in terms of A because that's what value we were given. So A equals 360 over n. And now it said that the measure of an exterior angle is greater than 50 degrees, which means that 50 has to be less than its equivalent, or saying that this 360 over n is greater than 50. And so now we can solve for n. So I'm going to multiply by n on both sides to get 50n is less than 360. Divide by 50 to get that n is less than 360 over 50. But now, what does this simplify to? I'm going to give myself a little bit more room up here. Well, 360 over 50 simplifies to, well, let's do the long division. 50 can go into 360 7 times, and I'm going to write a couple extra zeros in case we need them. So it can go in 7 times to get 350, and we subtract to get 10. Bring down this 0 that we can place after the decimal point. 50 goes into 102 times, and so we get 7.2. And so n, the number of sides, is less than 7.2, so the greatest number of sides is 7. So 8 is C. Number 9, the graph of a line in the xy plane has a slope 2 and contains the point 1, 8. The graph of a second line passes through the points 1, 2 and 2, 1. If the two lines intersect at the point AB, what is the value of A plus B? So what we can do here is we can find the equation for both of those lines. The first equation of the first line has slope 2 and point 18, so we can use point slope form. Point slope form, remind you, is y minus y1 equals n, or slope, times x minus x1. So we have our point y minus 8 equals our slope 2 times x minus 1. Y minus 8 equals 2x minus 2 plus 8 plus 8. We get y equals 2x. Excuse me. We get y equals 2x plus 6. So that was the first equation of the first line. Now let's do the second equation of the second line. So we can find the slope given the 2 points. As said earlier, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we can write out our 2 points, label our 2 points, and then solve for our slope, -1 over 1, which is a slope of -1. And so now that we know that our slope is -1, now we need to plug it into our point slope form. So I'll pick the point 1, 2. So we have y minus 2 equals -1 times x minus 1. Y minus 2 equals -x plus 1. Add 2 to both sides. Y equals -x plus 3. And now we can set both of our equations equal to each other, see where they intersect rather, and then get our 2 points and then add them together, our 2 coordinates. So we get 2x plus 6 equals -x plus 3. I'm going to add x to both sides. 3x plus 6 equals 3. minus 6 from both sides, we get 3x equals negative 3. And from this we can tell that x equals a negative 1. I should say, since it's the solution, it's a equals negative 1. So now that we know that what a equals, we can plug in a into either one of our equations and solve for b. So I find it easier to plug it into this second equation because it has easier numbers to work with. So y equals a negative 1 plus 3. So a negative 1, that's a plus. So 1 plus 3 equals 4. And then the question, be very careful. Negative 1, I don't know why a is circled. Negative 1 and positive 4 are both choices, but those are only the values of a and b separately. What we need to do is we need to add them together because the question asked a plus b. So negative 1 plus 4 equals a positive 3. 9 is b. Number 10, which of the following equations has a graph in the xy plane for which y is always greater than or equal to negative 1? So being greater than or equal to negative 1 in an algebraic graphing sense means that your function never goes below the horizontal line, imaginary line of y equals negative 1. And so let's look at all the different shapes of the different graphs and see what we come up with. So we see that, let's look at what graph A looks like. Graph for answer A, y equals the absolute value of x minus 2. And so that means that our graph starts at negative 2 and then looks something like a V. And so this, as you can see, crosses this y equals negative 1 imaginary dotted line. And so it cannot be A. So A is not the answer. And for B, y equals x squared minus 2. Once again, we start at negative 2 down here, and then we parabola, so we curve up like this. We again cross the y equals negative 1 imaginary dotted line, so it's not B. Let's look at what choice C shows. So x minus 2 quantity squared, which means that we start 2 units to the right. And then we draw our parabola. And you can see that we never actually cross this y equals negative 1 imaginary line, which makes our answer for 10 C. So, number 11, which of the following complex numbers is equivalent to 3 minus 5i divided by 8 plus 2i? So to figure this out, we're going to do what's called multiplying by the conjugate. So that looks like this, 3 minus 5i divided by 8 plus 2i. But then we're going to multiply by the conjugate of the bottom portion, which means multiplying by 8 minus 2i versus 8 plus 2i. And so when we FOIL our top and bottom, when we distribute, we get 24 minus 6i minus 40i plus 10i squared divided by, and now when you multiply by the conjugate, for example, 8 plus 2i times 8 minus 2i, when it's the same numbers and variables, just the sign changes, you can multiply just the first two terms and the last two terms. So 64 minus 4i squared. And now to see what these I squared will do, you can see here that I squared, the question notes that I equals the square root of negative 1. So I squared then means that it's the square root, it's the square of the square root, if that makes sense, of negative 1. So when you square root, those cancel and you get I squared equals a negative 1. So it changes the sign of whatever number it's attached to. So this 10, I squared, will become a minus 10. It'll simply become minus 10. And this minus 4i squared will become a plus 4. And then combining like terms on top and bottom, we get 24 minus 46i minus 10 over 68. 24 minus 10 is 14, so 14 minus 46i divided by 68. Divide everything by 2. 7 minus 23i over 34. And so this looks most similar to option C. Now with number 12, we see that a website uses the formula above to calculate a seller's rating R based on the number of favorable reviews F and unfavorable reviews N. Which of the following expresses the number of favorable reviews in terms of the other variables? And so what that means in terms of means equals. So which of the following expresses the number of favorable reviews, or F, in terms of or equal to the other variables? And so we can just do some algebraic manipulation to get F by itself. So let's write what we're given. R equals F divided by N plus F. To get rid of this fraction, we're going to multiply by N plus F on both sides. To get R times N plus F equals F, because this fraction cancels out. Then we're going to distribute Rn plus Rf equals F. Isolate the F variables by subtracting Rf from both sides. And then we see, okay. So we subtract Rf from both sides. So we subtract Rf from both sides, and then finally we get Rn equals F minus Rf. Then from there, we can pull out an F from this right side to get Rn equals 1 minus R times F. Divide both sides by 1 minus R, and then we're left with Rn over 1 minus R equals F, which is equal to B. Number 13. So this kind of question can be solved very quickly with a simple trick. What is the sum of all values of m that satisfy 2m squared minus 16m plus 8? Whenever a quadratic is, whenever the question asks you to find the sum of the values of a quadratic, of the answers to a quadratic, simply remember negative b over a. Negative b over a. And so what we do is we find the b term, which is negative 16, and the a term, which is 2, and just plug them in. So negative 16. And why negative 16 is the b term is because it is attached to the variable with a power of 1. And then divided by the a term, which is positive 2, because it's multiplied by the m squared term. So negative 16 divided by 2, or a positive 16 divided by 2 equals 8. So 13 is D. A radioactive substance decays at an annual rate of 13% if the initial amount of the substance is 325 grams. Which of the following functions F models the remaining amount of the substance in grams T years later? So we need to, for exponential growth, or exponential decay in this case, our principal, or our initial amount, must be multiplied by our percentage. So you see how choices C and D do not have our 325 on the outside. They have it on the inside, which is incorrect. And then the only difference between A and B is the decimal. And so what B is saying is that our radioactive substance will lose 13%, or no, will be reduced to 13% of its original value over however many years. So 325 times 0.13 after the first year will mean that this substance will be reduced to 13% of its original value. But that's not what we want. We want how much will be remaining. And so that's what choice A says. Each year, 87% will be remaining after that 13% has decayed. So 14 is A. Number 15, the expression 5x minus 2 divided by x plus 3 is equivalent to which of the following? Well, we can just do some long division and find our answer. So x goes into 5x 5 times. So then multiply 5 to x and 3, so 5x plus 15. Subtract, giving us negative 2 minus 15, so negative 17. And then we get 5 minus our remainder divided by our divisor. I believe this is called a divisor. It's the expression or number out front. And so this is what you're left with. So 15 is D. Number 16 says the sales manager of a company awarded a total of $3,000 in bonuses to the most productive salespeople. The bonuses were awarded in amounts of $250 or $750. If at least one $250 bonus and at least one $750 bonus were awarded, what is one possible number of $250 bonuses? And so, because, well, first off, we can write an equation. So 250x plus 750y equals $3,000. Right? Taken right from the wording of the problem. And so now what we can do is we can substitute 1 in for any of these variables and solve for the other variable, because the question says that if at least one of each type of bonus was awarded. And since we want to find the number of $250 bonuses awarded, I'm going to leave that variable and then simply substitute in 1 for y. And that works. Minus 750 minus 750. We get 250x equals 2,250. Divide 2,250 by 250, and you get 9. Number 17, in the equation above, a, b, and c are constants. If the equation is true, for all values of x, what is the value of b? So they give us 2 unfactored binomials, so I'm going to multiply them out and then see what we get. So 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x plus 5 is a 10x, plus a 3 times 3x, which is a 9x, and plus a 3 times 5, which is a plus 15. I'm going to write what it's equal to right beneath it to see if any patterns emerge. And we can see that there is a bit of a pattern, except for with our bx. We can see that we haven't combined our like terms, so 10x plus 9x equals 19x. And bx equals 19x. And the question wants the value of b, so b is 19. Let's make some room. If in the figure above, AE is parallel to line CD, and segment AD intersects segment CE at B. What is the length of segment CE? So we can see that right off the bat, these two triangles are similar and they're proportional in their lengths. Since AB is 10 and BD is 5, we can see that this smaller triangle here is half as big on each side as the bottom triangle here. And so from that, we can deduce that since BE is 8, CB is 4. And the question wants the length of the entire segment CE, which is just 4 plus 8, which equals 12. Number 19, this question is definitely for the more advanced students who are looking for those super top scores, I would not worry at all about trigonometry questions if you're not there yet in your math course. This will only appear on the test at most one time. But for my advanced listeners, let's take a look. This question, in my opinion, requires knowledge of the unit circle. And so in the xy plane above, O is the center of the circle, and the measure of angle OAB is pi over a radians. What is the value of A? So this immediately I can recognize as mimicking the unit circle value at pi over 6 radians, which on the unit circle has endpoints radical 3 over 2 comma 1/2. But our endpoints on this circle are simply radical 3 and 1. And what that tells me is that this circle has twice the radius. Well, how do I know that? Because the values are twice what they are on a unit circle. And a unit circle has a radius of 1. And so since the endpoints are twice as large, because there's no 2 on the denominator, I can deduce that this circle is twice the radius. But what that tells me is that this circle can be applied to the unit circle. And so side lengths doubled, but the angle stays the same. So the angle is still pi over 6. And so A is 6. Finally, number 20, in the system of equations above, A and B are constants. If the system has infinitely many solutions, what is the value of A over B? So we need to get these two equations to be the same, because that's what you need for a system to have infinitely many solutions. They must be the same line. And so to do that, let's first write out what we were given. In order for me to get this first equation to equal my second equation, I need them to both be equal to 60. And so how can I make my first equation equal to 60? Well, I can multiply it all by 5. So multiplying every term here by 5, I get 5ax plus 5by equals 60. I can then see that 5a equals 2 and 5b equals 8. So 5a equals 2, 5b equals 8. Divide everything by 5. You get a, 1 second. We get a equals 2 over 5. B equals 8 over 5. And I'm going to divide my two fractions because we want the value of A over B. So I'm going to now divide my two fractions. So 2 divided by 5, 2/5 divided by 8 over 5. We're going to switch, flip to divide our fractions. 2/5 times 5 over 8. The 5's cancel out, leaving us with 2 over 8 or 1 over 4. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be uploading more No Calculator section review videos in the coming weeks. So stick around for those, and thanks for watching.